Hello and welcome to the Calling the Real You podcast. I'm your host, Pamella Horton, and I call the real you out each and every week with very special guests like the one that we have today. Today we're talking with award-winning coach Greg Jackson, and we'll be discussing cultivating and operating from a champion mindset. Now, before I introduce Coach, please allow me to share how much I appreciate his approach to coaching. I'm a huge fan of his work, MMA, and the fighters. I highly respect the sport for multiple reasons. And one reason is the mindset that is required to be an elite fighter. And the second reason is MMA fighting is so much more like a chess match to me. It's super intellectual and highly methodical. The mental fortitude and discipline that is required to train and fight, let alone win, is just incredible. And MMA can actually be very beautiful. The fights are like a dance in many ways to me, contrary to what people believe. I know MMA may leave a bad taste in one's mouth, but only if they truly don't take the time to understand the inner workings of the sport. And what people usually see is the harshness or the quote-unquote gore of it. What is missed quite often is the level of respect and love that the fighters actually have for one another, their coaches, and even including their opponents. It is a sport that requires heart. If you are not a fan, I invite you today to look past any stereotypes and current beliefs you may have, to open yourself up to learn the mindset and heart it takes to cultivate, operate from a champion mindset for your life, your business, your relationships, and really ultimately for you. And that's where Coach Jackson comes in. He has a powerful understanding of the mind and consciousness and how to use both to your advantage. When you think of the best coaches in mixed martial arts, Greg Jackson is consistently mentioned as one of the top, if not the top guy. Coach Jackson has trained over 15 world champions, and he is co-owner of the top MMA Training Camp in the world, has won 3 World MMA Awards, including Best Coach, Best Gym, and even Team of the Year twice by the World MMA Awards. Coach Jackson, welcome to the Calling the Real You podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you here. You know, you have an incredible career. In fact, I remember hearing that you wanted to be a teacher, not a coach, although they're both similar. What's your story, and can you share for a few moments how is it that you came to be one of the best coaches in MMA?
Well, I guess my story is basically that I got talked into it. When I was younger, I grew up in a place that required me to understand combat at a very early age. I was raised in the South Valley of Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is a very predominantly Hispanic community, and that their culture has a very large emphasis on fighting itself. In other words, there's a very machismo attitude. So when I was younger, I had to kind of adapt to that culture. I became, through trial and error, a little bit of an expert in combat, and then wanted to teach that to other people, kind of make that my vocation. But I was a very self-defense orientated, kind of real-world instructor. My students saw this thing called the Ultimate Fighting Championship, which was kind of the precursor of mixed martial arts, and they began to have these competitions, which were very few rules competition. In those days, there weren't very many rules. It was almost a real fight. There were a few rules in there, but it was a much less regulated version of what we have now. And they talked me into it. They said, "Hey, we want to go do these competitions." For me, I was like, nah, I don't really, I don't hold with that. I'd much rather have us be more martial arts side, more self-defense orientated, more realistic, if you have to defend yourself against multiple people, using tools and environment and that kind of thing. So I got talked into it. We actually started winning all of these things, and so they wanted to do it more and more. And I kind of fell into being a coach. Like wasn't anything, that I woke up and said, I would like to be a coach today. I got talked into it, and 25 years later, here I am.
And lucky for all of us, here you are is right. Tell us, who have been your greatest influencers in your life?
Well, that's a very complicated question. I think the people that taught me the most, so I had to figure out, mixed martial arts is an amalgamation of all of these other martial arts. So it's a little bit from Taekwondo and a little bit from boxing and a little bit from kickboxing and wrestling and jiu-jitsu and kung fu and karate and everything you could think of. That we take elements of all that. So there was no real one instructor that was my guide. So there was no martial artist that said, here's your style, because what we do now didn't exist then. It's very, very new. It's a paradigm shift in gladiatorial combat. So there was nobody for me to say, okay, here's my instructor, here's my teacher. But I did have guides. My father was a great guide. He's a very intellectual individual. But most of my ideas came from a man named Jim Dudley, who is a math professor. He's a math professor now at the University of New Mexico. And he would take me out in the desert, and we would go on these long walks, and he would teach me about a lot of different mathematical ideas and philosophical ideas. So he really gave me my education. And he was a big influence on how I view cooperation and competition and kind of the mixing of the two. He was a very important guide. My co-owner of the school, Mike Winklejohn, was a very important technical guide for me. He was able to tighten up a lot of things in my techniques and help me kind of push and evolve the mixed martial arts into what we do today. And along the way, I had 100 little guides here and there, but as far as living people, those are my guides. And then I would look for inspiration. I would look to history. So the ones that I have hanging up in my office are Genghis Khan, Abraham Lincoln, an Arctic explorer named Ernest Shackleton, and George Washington. And so I admired each a little bit about those guys and tried to learn from them like they would be my teachers through, even though they weren't around, their writings and what they have done. Kind of help instruct me and inspire me all these years later. So those are kind of my teachers. Those were the people that put me on the path.
Yeah, and I remember reading somewhere that the books that you've read, and it's not just from these, The Art of War, I think it's a book that you read regularly. But these people, these influencers, the people that you gain inspiration from in terms of history, you haven't just read these books or learned about them once. I mean, you really steeped yourself like a good hot cup of tea, right? You really steeped yourself into their teachings and have absorbed them for your own, and you apply them in the gym and when coaching the other fighters. Is that true?
That's very true. A Book of Five Rings is probably the greatest strategy book I've ever read personally, written by a samurai in the 1500s named Miyamoto Musashi. And so studying his strategies and understanding his concepts were such a big deal and something that I still to this day, his book is so dense and so amazing that you'll miss something. I've read it, I don't know how many times I've read it, but it's a lot. And I constantly quote him and use his ideas because he was an absolute genius. And then still to this day, I'll read something and I was like, how did I miss this? This is another beautiful pearl of wisdom here that I can kind of pull out and use for not just myself but for my fighters as well. It's a really amazing experience to have such a volume of knowledge that he was able to pass on to us. So in The Art of War and B.H. Little Heart Strategy, there's a lot of books that really influenced me that way, where I would become, there's the old saying, right, you can see as far as you can see because you stand on the shoulders of giants, and I think that's very true in my case. I'm so grateful to all these people that came with much smarter than I am, with these great ideas that I'm able to kind of climb up on their shoulders and see just a little bit farther, but only because I stand on their shoulders.
Well said. How important is, I want to say mindset, but I don't want to go there just yet. Can you talk to us about mindfulness and visualization in the sport of MMA?
Well, sure, and I think that's a super important aspect of combat in general. MMA, but it's where you take your life, right? So if you come at your life, not that it's a combat per se, like you're actually fighting, but that you're striving for something, and I think that MMA can be an allegory for anybody's life, really. With anybody that's striving for a goal, like you're looking for a goal, visualization is very important, and mindfulness too. So, and here's why. If you go in, let's take the allegory of an MMA fight. just as a metaphor, straight up. Let's say that if you are going into a fight and you go into that fight and you say, well, maybe I win. If I'm lucky, I'll win. Maybe not. I'm not really sure. I'll give it a shot. You're not putting yourself in a place that's going to maximize your chances of success. You're putting yourself in basically a roll of the dice, or even worse, a place that's going to be detrimental to your chances for success. So having the proper kind of mindset that visualization allows you to acquire or to achieve is very important. If you go into that same fight and saying, listen, I don't care what is going to be thrown at me, I don't care what's going to happen, I'm going to be successful. I'm just not going to stop until I am successful. And here's what success looks like at the end. I'm going to get, in MMA, I get my hand raised by the referee. That is going to happen to me no matter what you throw at me, no matter what comes at me. When you come into it with that warrior mentality that you're striving for that goal, you have to visualize that goal. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's what it's going to feel like. But you have to visualize then, what are the things that are going to come at me? What are the things that are going to come after me? What's going to try to get in the way between me and getting my hand raised? And so you visualize each one of the things. Maybe it'll be, somebody punches me in the nose, or they tackle me, or something like this. Then you can say, okay, this is what I'm going to do when this happens. This is what I'm going to do when that happens. And what that does is gives you a proper mindset. That visualization, then, when it happens, it's not surprising to you. It's not shocking to you. It's not something that pulls you out of, okay, well, now I no longer want this goal because things were hard and I didn't realize it was going to be like this. The visualization on every step of the way has allowed you to kind of roadmap yourself to that success. Well, I knew that I was going to get punched in the nose because I had visualized it. So it's not going to negatively affect me because I knew this was going to happen. I knew this person was going to take me down and tackle me because I visualized it, and I knew that was going to happen. So visualization is a very, very powerful tool all the way up until and including success, because you're allowed then to enable predictability. Oh, I'm okay. Everything's okay. I knew it was going to be tough when I started this. I visualized some things that could happen, and even if it's not exactly the same things, you visualize those scenarios. So maybe I didn't get punched in the nose. I got punched in, the chin. Well, it's still kind of painful, and it's still basically the same idea, but I was able to visualize, okay, now this happened to me, and I'm going to fight through it and work through it. So when it happens to you in real life, I've already been here. I already visualized this process. I know what to do. And that's very, very important for success. If you're getting yourself into that mindset, then success isn't far behind.
Yeah, the visualization is similar to drilling. You're drilling the scenarios in order to make the unfamiliar familiar, so you're not caught off guard and you can remain grounded and centered and achieve what you set out to achieve.
You just said it better than I even did. Perfect.
That's too kind. I witnessed you. I watched you. My husband, Eric, and I I've said this before, we're huge fans. We watch fights. There's so many fights that are available to us now, way more than even just 6 or 7 years ago, even 5 years ago. And so we constantly watch fights. And when I watch you corner your men and women, you're super calm. I never see you raise your voice. I never see you try to intimidate your fighters. You, in fact, encourage breathing. Your response is breathe. You encourage them to calm down and be relaxed and to really be calm in the chaos, be the eye of the storm, so to speak. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and the reason why?
Well, sure. If you're in a situation like that where things are there's another person that is trying to is striving against you and trying to basically pull you out of success, you need to relax a little bit so that you can do several things. One is you can understand the situation. Two is that you can kind of reacquire that mindset that you need, the warrior mindset. So you can say, okay, I'm all right, everything's fine, everything's calm, I'm able to kind of push forward again. And then three, and most importantly, is that you can be creative, that you can stick to your plan, that you can adapt your plan, that you can kind of whatever it takes to get to that success. But you're able to do that from a place of calm. What happens if you're not in that place of calm? Let's say that you're in a fight and you sit down and somebody's screaming and yelling at you and you're already nervous and your heart rate is well over 140 and there's so much happening that you'll just lock down. You'll lock down. You'll maybe have one idea and you're not really in control of that situation. By calming yourself down, by breathing, by bringing everything into a steady state, you're able to then use that as a platform to say, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, and I want to do this, and then you can go out and do it. So there's several prongs to that are very important. The other thing is you can't really process information if your heart rate's over 140 anyway. So getting your heart rate down is a big deal. Metaphorically, just making sure that you stay calm while things are rushing at you will allow you to creatively solve problems where you might not have the ability to do that creatively had you just locked down and you're so nervous and so tense and so tight that you can't be mindful of where you are. But that mindfulness allows creativity, and creativity is how you solve problems. So without bringing somebody down and relaxing them, you're not going to get back to that warrior mentality, and you certainly won't be creative.
Mhm. So that's awesome. I want to hear that all over again. When you are working with your fighters, and I imagine, so all of us we're born perfect and whole. That's a belief that I have. We don't have any baggage until, as we're growing up and we're given other people's belief systems and,
Sure.
baggage, so to speak, I guess. And
sure,
things
absolutely.
can hold us back, right? And so
is
that one of the biggest things that holds your fighters back that you see, or holds anybody back, is the words that we say to ourselves?
Absolutely. I think that self-doubt is learned a lot. Now, sometimes you learn it through trial and error. Your own, okay, so let's say I tried to swim all the way over there and I couldn't do it because I wasn't in shape. And that can actually be a positive thing, I think, where like, okay, I need to learn how to do this skill. But I think that feedback loop gets corrupted, and something that's positive like that, and let's just take swimming. Like, I need to swim to that wall. Okay, I can't swim to that wall because I don't know how to swim well enough to get there. So in a normal, what that's designed to do, I think, is say, okay, well, now I want to learn to swim better so that I can get to that wall. So that should be a clean way to do it with no baggage. In other words, I did it, I couldn't do it, I'm going to figure out how to do it, and then I did it. And now I can do it. When people tell you you can't do it, you're not this, you're not that, that takes that process and corrupts that process and says, so instead of swimming to the wall eventually, you just never swim to the wall. You say, well, I couldn't make it. And then people are saying, yeah, you couldn't make it because you're not good enough to do that. Or you don't have somebody telling you. Maybe your own mind says that. You don't have somebody saying, no, you can actually swim to the wall. Just get better at swimming and you'll be fine. But there's nobody to guide you there. Or, in fact, life has kind of beaten you down where there's no positivity, there's no optimism there. Like, I'm just going to keep trying until I swim to the wall. No one's guiding you there. As a matter of fact, people can detrimentally say, well, obviously you can't swim to the wall. You're not good enough to do that. That corruption is very damaging, and I think that's probably the biggest impeding factor to growth, is people actively pushing you down and saying, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do this. Or even you learn that. You did it one time, and instead of saying, I'm going to learn to swim and go better, you say it to yourself. And so part of training to your full potential is getting out of that. I want to train to my full potential. I then need to swim to that wall. And if I can swim halfway and then halfway back, that's where I start. Then I can do 3/4 and I have to swim back, then that's where I go. But eventually, going to the wall is less far than going back. And when you get to that place where, I made it to the wall, all you have to do is one time. And you can say, wow, I know I can swim to this wall. That's a big deal. And understanding that, okay, the process is supposed to work this way, and anything that isn't in line with that positive outcome is a corruption of that process, I think is very important, because then you start to see, this person doesn't want me to swim to the wall because they never swam to the wall, and so they're trying to hold me back. So that, like misery loves company, there's a little bit of that stuff. Or this person's going to be jealous of me if I make it to the wall. I think there's a lot of that. And then I think internally, that's external factors. I think internally, sometimes if you're not really committed to going to that wall, it can be a little scary. Like, wow, that wall's way over there, and I don't know if I can swim all the way And that's where that relentless positivity has to come in, that warrior mindset has to come in, where you have to make a choice. Like, I'm going to swim to that wall if it takes me the rest of my life. That kind of I always call it a samurai mentality of just that your single-mindedness to get there. That's where that has to come in. And that's where training allows you to do that. Like, you have to have a guide. You have to have somebody that's saying, nope, you can do it. I know it's scary. It is scary over there, but you can do it. I think that's where my piece comes in. Like, that's what I enjoy about people. I love seeing them swim halfway and then have to get pulled out of the pool and again. But eventually, to watch them make it all the way to the wall is a real thrill. So I'm very lucky that I get to be a part of that.
I share that with you. I'm very fortunate to work with people to be able to mentor them in that respect, and I share that feeling with you immensely. Fear can be extremely debilitating, and without somebody to help you recognize exactly what it is that you fear and where it originated from, it could be a long road for somebody.
I agree.
You had yeah. I guess I can't believe we're here. It's half an hour's over. I can't believe it. I'm so grateful for your time and energy today. My last question, I guess, for you, well, two questions. And I asked you this not being recorded, and I'm going to ask you recording it. Would you come back at some point when your schedule permits to continue the conversation? Because I feel like your knowledge is just really important, and people really need to hear from you and need to know who you are, in my humble opinion. And so would you join me again sometime in the future?
Sure, absolutely. Just tell me when and where, and I'm there. I love conversations like this that have meaning and purpose and hopefully help people out a little bit. I think that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that's the purpose of the Calling the Real You podcast for sure. And my last question is, one piece of advice, simple and quick, that somebody can do to begin to change their mindset from victim to warrior.
Well, that, I think, requires a guide. That's actually one of the things that I like that we're doing is if you want one piece of advice that will help you, find a mentor, find somebody that can help you guide along that path, because it's very lonely by yourself, and you can do it, but there's not, for me, I haven't found a lot of people that can just wake up and be like, you know what, I'm going to be a victim, or I'm not going to be a victim, I'm going to be a warrior. That can happen, but it's very organic. If you want to have help with that, that's where you find a mentor or a methodology. So I would try to look for a methodology or a mentor to help you change your mindset, because other than just saying, I'm going to do it, which is, listen, that's a very viable strategy. If you don't have that, if it hasn't happened for you yet, find a mentor and help, and let that mentor help you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you again so much for your time and the coordination to make this happen today. I really appreciate you and the work that you're doing. I want to take the moment just to thank a few other people before we hang up, Coach, and that is, thank you, everyone, for joining us on the Calling the Real You podcast. I want to thank my husband, Eric, who is my best friend and business partner. You all know I wouldn't be able to do this easily without him. I wish to thank Sacred Stories for hosting Calling the Real You, along with Lux Salon and Spa, Yola Portraits, Karen D. Felice Designs, and the transformational music by my friend Jim Oliver. Again, thank you so much, Coach, for joining us, and have a wonderful couple of weeks, everyone. Remember, call the real you out each and every day.